So BOOMTOWN is a story of 4 people from very different backgrounds who get together to try and start a restaurant, right? That's the basic story, but the focus is on their journey, on their friendship, the bonds that they form. And it's focused around the adventure that entrepreneurship can provide. So what I wanted to bring was the excitement of entrepreneurship. I wanted to bring that to a mainstream audience. And the kind of relationships that these journeys provide. So I think in urban India, among the people who are in professional jobs, there is a growing sense of this dream, right? The dream of trying to do something different, trying to do something on your own. And I share this dream. I have had a startup before. And it was one of the more defining experiences of my life. I really enjoyed the process and the madness that comes around it, right? And I think that makes for a great story. If you already have the money, there is not such a significant arc to that story. Maybe the arc comes from your relationships. But there is a story inherent in the creation of something new, and that's what I wanted to explore. So yeah, I mean, it is a feel-good story. It's supposed to be something that you can just really enjoy. It will make you feel optimistic. It'll make you enjoy the time you spend reading the book. So yeah, it does lead to the rainbow. But at the same time, I try to keep it realistic. So it's not that they just very easily get to that point. Neither is it that it happens through some incredible happenstance. They go through the process. They meet investors who are not interested. They have falling outs. They almost the team breaks up. They have to go against a lot of tradition, against their families to some extent. But again, it's not over dramatized, right? People react like people would. So their parents are against it, but they're not like, I will disown you. It's not like that. So that's the whole story. And yeah, at the end, something good happens. So many of them are inspired from people I know in parts, right? All 4 of them are main characters in a way, right? So one of them, the person who gets the action started, his name is Jacob James. He's a Syrian Christian. He comes from a business family, right? But he wants to prove himself as separate from his family. And he has been a bit of a dilettante all his life. He's not done much in the, in 20, 25 years of his existence. So he comes back to India from abroad, and he wants to find adventure of his own, right? And he meets Javed, who is the grandson of a very famous Old Delhi chef, something like Kareem's, for example, right? The owner of Kareem's. So Javed is a grandson who wants to actually innovate with the recipes, whereas Javed's grandfather, Khan Mia, wants to keep the purity of his traditional recipes, right? So that's the kind of battle Javed is fighting. And so these two get together to try and start a restaurant. And then JJ brings together his friends, one of who is a divorcee, Sheetal, who works in the hotel industry, and one is his childhood friend, Roy, who has just got laid off his job. And these 4 characters then go through that process. Right. No, it's very character-driven. So all 4 of the characters are what drive the story, really. And in fact, the 5th character, Khan Mia, is also very important to the story. So actually, it is his refusal to let Javed innovate, his refusal to give his blessings that really drives a lot of the story forward, right? And how do they convince him? Each of the characters have their flaws, they have their motivations, and that is explored. That where do they start from and where do they end, right? And where does this process of starting a restaurant, what does that bring to their lives? So I think BOOMTOWN is very good for anyone who has had the dream of entrepreneurship, right? And one thing it deals with a lot is this idea of a cultural clash, right? And something it explores is how culture actually changes. So at one point in the book, Javed actually confronts his grandfather, who keeps insisting on traditional recipes, and Javed tells him that the recipes you actually follow, your ancestors who cooked for the Mughals couldn't have followed, because some of the ingredients didn't exist. They came from the New World, right? They came much later. And it's something I'm very interested in, the idea that everything actually changes. What we think of as traditional is probably just 150 years old, which is not very old. So that is another idea in BOOMTOWN, which I think people find quite interesting. So in fact, for me, it's a bit upside down. So I wanted to be a writer since I was a kid. So I've been writing for a long time. In fact, the journey of this book if it goes back, this is not the first book I've written. So I'd written short stories as well as full-length novels, and I'd won some awards. Deccan Herald's short story competition many years back. Something Oxford bookstores had a competition which I won a prize in, and that's actually how I met my agent, who then took this book forward. So I wanted to be a writer much before I got into management, right? But life takes you where it takes you. What I've tried to do is the things I've learned from from management, from having a startup, I've tried to bring those together in my book because that's what I know best. And to put that together into the kind of story I would love reading. So this one was pretty fast actually. 6 months I finished off. In my second year in IIM Bangalore, so I was doing my MBA. So at the end of summers I had the offer. So the second year pretty much I sat down and just wrote the book. Yeah, so actually I have co-written a book with my younger brother. That's about a vigilante, right? It kind of takes a spin on the Batman myth, that kind of vigilante, but in a very, very different way. So he's not like a superhero, right? He's trying to change the system by manipulating it. So that's already written. Rupa has already accepted it, so that should probably come out in a year or two. I see myself between literary fiction and commercial fiction, right? And that's a place that actually the market is not very keen on. But thankfully, Rupa and the editor Kaushalya, I have a very good rapport with her. She seems to believe in me, but that is the space I want to be in, because the books I love reading, right, they're not totally, very simplistically written commercial fiction. Neither are they all the time very, very literary, right, dealing with really sad people's stories, right. So, I mean, sometimes you want to read that just for the beautiful language, for the thoughts, but sometimes you just want, something that a very good movie gives you. And I love that feeling. So that's the kind of books I want to write. So even this vigilante book, it has some very, very important ideas that I'm trying to put forward. The idea of police reform, for example, right? Which, even Kiran Bedi has been talking about, right? And I want to put that in a book form, from a vigilante angle and so on. And the first book, BOOMTOWN, that is also about, entrepreneurship and different kinds of entrepreneurship and what is hard and what's good about it. So these are important ideas that society is grappling with. But the stories are not preachy, they're just interesting, fun stories. So generally I like lucid writing. So I like a bit of a flair in the sentence. And BOOMTOWN has a lot of that. For the second book, we actually try to trim it down a bit, not to reach a certain audience, but simply because a thriller, which we were trying to attempt, doesn't lend itself well to very flowery writing. It distracts you, right? You're trying to, what's going to happen, what's going to happen. So it needs a very Ernest Hemingway type of sentence, just very simply written, but has punch. So that's what we try to do. So the style changes with the atmosphere of the book a lot. And it's something I enjoy doing. I like writing different types of books.